Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about dynamic or developmental effort in the context of conjugate training, so let's get into it. Now, if you'll recall, in the previous video where we went over the three different effort methods within a conjugate framework, dynamic effort was mainly there to help manage training stress across a training week, as well as improve a lifter's ability to accelerate by lifting submaximal weights with maximal speed. And as I alluded to in that last video, this particular method within the conjugate framework is one that I make the biggest changes to. I like to call it developmental effort. And what I mean by that is these waves will still use submaximal loads, but we often develop other secondary attributes beyond simply acceleration or speed. In the simplest of terms, developmental effort waves are a means of training what needs most focus in the training week, aside from a lifter's limit strength. Now, while I had played with this approach in the past, even Westside will actually swap out speed work for 5x5 work on occasion, it was when I took Shane's mentorship, especially his periodization course, that it really helped me solidify the value of this approach. So I want to have him on screen right now, and he's going to talk a little bit about how he views conjugate.
Hi Mark, thanks for inviting me on to talk about the conjugate system. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Shane Reese. I own a company called MST Systems, Modified Strongman Training Systems, and we train strongmen and strongwomen for strongman competitions. We use the conjugate system a lot, and for me, with the conjugate system, well, I'll start by talking about my views towards it. It's basically conjugate is, to me, a blend of adaptation within a block of training. So you'd be looking to, primarily you mainly separate things into trying to achieve dynamic effort adaptation, which for me personally I separate into like strength acceleration or speed strength. And then you've got your repetition effort, which could be seen as kind of volume, ability to tolerate volume, handle volume, do more volume on a specific movement or maybe an accessory movement. And then you've got your maximum effort, which is your kind of ability to express absolute strength on a specific lift or variation of a specific lift. And within the 1 to 5 rep range. Also, for me, during the conjugate system, I have like a skill section personally as well. Like skill acquisition practice, we're going to call it. And then I would also have like an absorption or triphasic. If I had to say how we apply conjugate, it does vary being kind of prepared to perform at any given time, so to speak. So when, like, let's say I'm programming people in the Giants live scene, these guys might have like 12 comps a year. It's hard to specifically prep for all those shows. Whereas if you have like a conjugate style approach, then you're able to have them not train specifically for the show, but be ready to train for, so be ready to do the show at any given moment. And also, when you talk about strongman events, sometimes you don't want to go heavy on the event every week. Sometimes, especially if it's really heavy. So you can either have heavy rotating with skill, or max effort rotating with dynamic effort. You do speed work, like. Let's just pretend there's a yoke in the show. There isn't, but let's just pretend there is. You could do max effort yoke followed by dynamic effort yoke, and do speed yoke if you wanted to. So that's my kind of rough overview on conjugate. It's extremely complex though, and I could probably talk about conjugate for about 5 hours. So hopefully I kind of condensed it simply. But the way we apply MST would always depend on the level of the athlete and the area that they're at in the training life, because at certain points in time, conjugate could be really great for a comp prep, or it could be terrible for a comp prep, or it could be really good for off season, or it could be terrible for off season. And the key with conjugate is to have it as a tool in the shed and understand the right time to apply it, and then you're going to get really good results out of it. I really like the way Mark applies conjugate, by the way. I think all his, what is he, what do you call it, the capo of the conjugate cartel? So yeah, with a name like that, you've got to be good at Conjugate, right? So yeah, I really like the way Mark applies Conjugate. The information he puts out on Instagram is awesome, and you probably put out too much information on Conjugate, don't you? You're sometimes giving everybody the whole answers, aren't you? You're revealing the industry secrets, you little bugger, but keep it going back. Love your info, love your Insta, and yeah, that's what those keep sending.
Now, just to give a quick summary of some of the key points that Shane touched on, Conjugate is a blend of adaptations within a given block of training. Speed work is valuable, but not the only thing to consider aside from max effort. Repetitive work is your volume work and your ability to tolerate volume thereof, so you can almost think of this as work capacity. Max effort varies between 1 to 5 repetitions on a given variation of a lift used to express maximal strength. He likes to have a skill acquisition aspect of the training as well as something such as triphasic or an absorption phase. Conjugate does help you be ready to perform at any given time, and it's very valuable for athletes competing frequently. Some of these Giants Live athletes will be competing up to 12 times a year. He might use something such as a speed, rep, or max weekly rotation, an ABC rotation, very similar to what you might have seen from Brendan Lilly's cube method. And also, as he said, I give away a lot of the material, and he likes it. And actually, if you have taken the MST periodization course, you will see a sample week of Conjugate training by yours truly in it. And this is also where I developed the 1-1-2 approach, in that we would do a lower max, upper max, and then 2 full body days thereafter. And I'll include a link to that video in the description box below if you want to learn a bit more about that split. Again, a big thanks to Shane for taking the time out of his day to record that for us. Now, let's continue on regarding developmental effort. In terms of adapting these DE waves, what I generally look at is what is the lifter lacking in their ability to execute the lift correctly to their maximal strength? What is the bottleneck? Is it positioning? Do they just plain not have enough muscle? Do they need more skill or tech work, or can they not sustain proper effort due to a lack of conditioning? Generally, you're going to see it's a combination of these factors, but once we have an idea of where the low-hanging fruit is, we can tune the wave to better attack the weak link and make some very quick progress. Now, a perfect use case example of this would be the log clean and press. Let's say we have a lifter who has a pretty good strict press, but their push press is a bit sloppy. Through video review and just general assessment, you could probably assume that it's going to be their rack position and their dip drive mechanics that are limiting them. So while we can cue head back and elbows up, that will help. We can also, in turn, use developmental waves to address those limiting factors by forcing them to spend more time in a rack position, practice their dip drive both in terms of timing and the depth of the dip drive, as well as increase exposure to the dip drive on non-pressing days. So this would allow for more frequent exposure to it, helping improve their skill aspect of the log clean and press. So here's a practical example of a 9-week developmental effort wave we might use for our lifter. Up first, we're going to look at the upper developmental day, and what we're doing here is we're actually implementing a triphasic approach. So for the first 3 weeks, they're going to do a 3-second eccentric on the dip drive. So what that means is the log will be in the rack position, and 3, 2, 1, down, and then reverse into the push press. Then in weeks 4 through 6, we're going to do a pause dip. So they'll go down, hold the position at the bottom of their dip. So they're down, 3, 2, 1, boom, right into the push press thereafter. And then for the final 3 weeks, we're going to do standard work, and we'll allow the use of fatigue singles in week 9 just to kind of get a view of where they're at. What this wave does is it forces them to spend more time not only in the rack position, but also help clean up their dip drive in terms of both the angle and how they go down, plus the depth of their dip drive in the log clean and press, thus improving the skill and positioning of the movement. Next up, the 9-week wave for the front squat. What we'd be doing here is a paused front squat, ideally versus chains, but this is just set to be raw weight. I wanted to keep this relatively simple. And the idea here is we're having them do a 3-second pause in the whole of the front squat. And the reason why is this forces them to spend more time in a front rack position, plus being paused in the bottom, they're going to have to use a lot of upper back and really cue those elbows to remain up to make sure they don't cave. And all that extra upper back work and time spent in the rack position is going to carry over to their log clean and press. Additionally, I'd likely have them do their front squats using straps. And the reason for that is it's going to more closely emulate the log's rack position, as well as I find it increases upper back recruitment, so you can see how we are indirectly improving the log using a secondary movement. And after their front squats, I'd have them move into some jerk dips. And this we just think RPE 8. So what a jerk dip is holding that bar in the rack position or using straps, depending on what bar we have them using. They could even use a log if they wanted to. They're just going to do the dip phase of their push press, not into the push press. This is going to give them more exposure to that lacking aspect of their log press, which is the dip drive mechanics, but it's not going to overload their press and give them more time to recover. Because based off what we talked about earlier, the lifter's pressing strength is there, we just need to clean up their rack and dip drive mechanics. So using this developmental effort wave allows us to do that. And you'll see we use triphasic for the log itself, then we're using a paused front squat wave, and then we're just adding in a supplemental movement that addresses one specific aspect of the lift that needs a little bit more attention. On screen right now are a few other hypothetical 3-week developmental effort waves you could use. So for example, let's say you have lacking work capacity. You could do something such as a 10-minute density wave where you'll do max threes in week 1 at 75%, max triples at 80% in week 2, and then max doubles in week 3 at 85%. And in parentheses, I have some suggested total reps you should be arriving at. I actually really like this one, especially for weighted calisthenics, chin-ups and dips in particular. Now let's say your squats, you just need a little extra warming up and you find that you're just a little unstable and you don't feel comfortable going fast right off the bat. You might try a control and speed wave where you do half of your work paused, then a little heavier moving into your speed thereafter. This is one I've used in the past for my front squats. It really helped me gain a lot more confidence and competence in the movement. Now let's say you're just needing to get more jackedness. You could do a power builder approach where it's a 3x10, 4x8, and then 5x6 at the percentages on screen. So you can see what we're doing here is these are lighter load training days, except density makes it a little heavier, but it's very few reps per set, but that's another conversation. But what these allow us to do is address bottlenecks without doing max effort lifts on our secondary days within the training week. Now, I do think we need to circle back regarding speed work. Make no mistake, I'm not saying it's bad, I'm not saying it's useless, it's just one that I rarely use. Now, if I do have lifters using it, or if you yourself want to use it, I strongly suggest you get access to bands or chains. You want to stick to lower intensities, probably 60 to 75%, and that is total weight at lockout. So for example, if I'm saying to use 10 to 15% of a chain, 60% would be 50% bar weight plus 10% in chain, for example. And the benefit of the accommodating resistance here is without it, your body's naturally going to decelerate your rep over the top to keep you from tearing something. And at the bottom there are just a few examples of what accommodating resistance might look like in a speed work wave, as well as an example of non-accommodating resistance speed work. Now, in terms of programming speed work, right now what I have on screen is my old reliable speed work wave. So 8 triples, 8 doubles, and then 6 doubles. And then if I did want to use accommodating resistance, I will take 10% off of the bar and then add 15% in accommodating resistance. So for example, week 1 becomes 55% bar weight and then 15% accommodating resistance, which means it's roughly 70% at lockout. So over the top, it would be a little bit heavier than the old reliable wave without the accommodating resistance. But when you consider the fact that it's lighter at the bottom, it makes sense because we're generally stronger at the top of a movement anyways. And I would use that more for squatting and pressing, whereas if we're talking deadlifts, you'll see it'd be 5 triples, 6 doubles, and then 8 singles. And the same rules apply regarding the accommodating resistance. So let's say if you want to do the 5 triples, we would knock 10% off that, so it'd be 50% deadlift in terms of raw weight, and then another 15% on top of that for accommodating resistance. Now, as far as when I do use speed work, I will use a more West Side inspired approach to it when my athletes are actually coming off after a competition, just to get them to train a bit lighter and reduce fatigue. Generally, I'll forego the use of accommodating resistance as well. It's also a really good option if you are focused more on your conditioning, because at that timeline, if you're likely in a calorie deficit, you're pushing your cardio, your ability to recover is going to be diminished, and we need to use what recovery resources you have available to help you recover from your heavy work. So speed work slots in really nicely in this application. Now, my favorite method of speed work is actually using contrast training. And the reason why is you don't have to futz with bands or chains. It's a little more universally applicable, especially if you do train in a commercial gym. And how it works is you're going to pick a jump or a throw that matches your main lift, and you'll perform 1 to 3 reps with it. Then you're going to move into the actual lift you're training, hitting 1 to 3 reps at 60 to 75% of that lift's given max. Rest about 90 seconds, 2 minutes, and you want to do 6 to 8 total rounds of that. So an example might be doing such as a broad jump into a deadlift or a med ball slam into a push press. Ultimately, what you need to ask yourself is, what is your bottleneck with your lift? Is it skill or form? You might try using triphasic or the old reliable wave. If you just need pure strength, try a control and speed wave. More muscle, power building, or density wave. Conditioning, density wave. If you find you just need more intensity, you're really trying to lock in and get more aggressive with your movements, this is a great time to consider a contrast wave. Ultimately, in a base building phase, developmental work is done specifically to correct identified bottlenecks in a lifter's ability to express maximal strength on a given lift. Ultimately, regardless if you're looking to improve your bar speed, add muscle, or refine technique, developmental work gives you the opportunity to attack multiple weak links, whether it be your positioning, timing, or acceleration. All these things can limit your ability to lift as heavy as possible and express that strength, but the ability to use lighter loads also helps us manage recovery and fatigue throughout the training week. And remember, even Westside would occasionally replace dynamic effort work with something such as a 5x5 for lifters who need to fill out a weight class. This wraps up an overview of dynamic/developmental effort. Obviously, we could go even deeper into this, talk about something such as barbell complexes for skill development, but I feel like that would take this video from a general overview and make it really specific and deep. But if that's something we wanted to talk about down the road, let me know in the comments section and I can make that happen. So that wraps up today's video on dynamic/developmental effort training. Thanks so much for watching to this point. Hope you found something useful. If you have any comments or questions, let me know down below in the comments section. The best comments and questions are ones I will turn into topic videos. Also, remember, I do offer one-to-one coaching. It's what I do full-time. The odds are very good. I'd love to work with you. With that being said, you folks have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video.